Right. Uh, Hello, welcome you all. Hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Virendra.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Okay. Right. First of all, welcome you all for the host community. First of all, we have today we have Mr. Kasun Vidhanage for this webinar, uh, and here is waiting for you. So I'd like to tell that we will share the link for post the questions what you have. So let's welcome our Mr. Kasun Vidhanagi. Hello, are you?
Hello.
Yeah, we can continue.
Hello. Hi. Welcome. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear.
Yeah, we
Okay, so
Yeah,
let's start the session, right? Will you
yeah,
share the link for the questions? No?
yeah, I will share. I will share in chat. Okay.
Okay. I think we will start the session while Hindu is sharing the link uh, for questions. Okay. Are you guys with me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so I will start the session. So you already know the title, right? Introduction to Vue.js. So I'm Kasun Vithanage. This is a bit about myself and what I'm doing right now. I'm co-founder. Um, I'm currently working on a startup, and I was contributor at Joomla as well. And I was also working as a sum of code mentor, and I'm also currently a member at Mozilla and Mozilla Sri Lanka, and uh, also I am also doing part-time. As a hobby, we are doing a YouTube channel called Dev Talks. You can find really cool stuff there. So, and I really love open source technologies. So this is a bit about myself. This is a bit about myself. Things shared in the chat. Okay. So now let's start the session. Okay. So what is Vue.js? This is the first thing I think you need to know. and I'm going to give the right answer. It's a progressive JavaScript framework. And I'm not going to explain about this right now. First, we will check out how Vue.js was built. So this is the history of Vue.js, and this is the founder of Vue.js. His name is Ivan. He worked at Google and Meteor, and while he was working at Google, he worked there with AngularJS, and he felt like this AngularJS was little bit of heavy, but it has some good parts. So he decided to create a minimal framework using which represent similar characteristics to AngularJS and React.js at that time. So then he switched back to Meteor, the company. It's another JavaScript framework, and he started working there as well. So after he released the Vue.js, it gained some popularity. He decided to quit all his jobs and work full time in Vue.js. So since then, he's working on Vue.js full time, and he's also helping other open source projects as well. I really like this guy, how he managed to do this and how he helped the community. And this is the person who actually behind everything we talk right now. So bit about the background. So let's check out who uses Vue.js. So you might have heard of Angular and React, but you might not be aware of people who uses Vue.js already. So these are some big companies. Google also uses Vue.js, and Apple also uses, GitLab also uses, and Zoom, the most loved platform for students, uses Vue.js for their website, their web content, and Upwork. I think you are familiar with Upwork and BMW website, and there are like ton of other websites which is using Vue.js. And I think you saw this image. This Perseverance rover landed a few months back, and this was the first image shared to the internet. So as you can see, this is from NASA, and I saw this tweet which is from Nuxt.js, which is an open source framework written on Vue.js. So yeah, so and the thing is that NASA also uses Vue.js, so you can add that to list as well. So this is currently status of the Vue.js. You can see it is very popular in GitHub. It has like 180K stars already. And the beauty of Vue.js is it is not backed by a single company. It is backed by a community. So there can be people from Google, Facebook, and other major companies contributing to Vue.js. And it is not like driven like by a major company. So I think that is pretty special because other frameworks, you already know that Google back Angular and React backed by Facebook, and these are all major players. But also Vue.js is considered as the main player as well, but it is not driven by such motive. There's no company behind that. There are only people behind the entire project. So I think that is the specialty of Vue. So it gets ideas from everywhere, every person. So I think that is pretty nice as a open source project. Okay, so I told you about Progressive and I didn't explain that. And now I'm going to explain a bit about it. So by Progressive, it means that you don't need to adapt to your JS into your applications from the beginning. So imagine that you have an website already which is using jQuery or something like that, and you want to add this reactivity into your application and make it more better. So you don't need to start over. You can just use the existing website and use Vue.js with it. So there's no problem. No problem doing that. So Vue.js is mainly focusing on Vue.js is mainly focusing on view layer. It is not focusing on other logic. You have complete freedom doing whatever you want. So for example, in Angular, you are pretty limited to what they gives you. For example, to do an HTTP call, there are like certain libraries and certain ways. But similar to React.js, Vue.js also gives you the complete freedom of underlying architecture. Vue.js only displaying things and helping you to write a better application, which not by enforcing a lot of things. So, okay, so this is the other question, why you need to use Vue.js. So the main reason for learning Vue.js, it has a very easy learning curve. So you can learn Vue.js pretty quickly. And I really hope if you stayed for this session, at the end, you will know that you will learn how to write a pretty good application. And it has a well-defined ecosystem. So there are like a lot of things you can find it in internet, or to, for example, to do certain things like routing and other things. So Vue.js has a pretty nice ecosystem, and actually it has best of both world. I really like things from Angular and React, and Vue combine both of them into a single project. And it is very simple. You will see that you will see when in next slides that how simple is Vue.js. And it is very simple to, you can create a very complex application without writing a lot of code. And it is very flexible, as I said before. It is not enforcing you to do things in certain ways. And it has a thing called speed shaking, which is reducing the bundle size at the end. So your browsers will be very happy when loading the website. And it also has server-side rendering, SSR. So if you want to like optimize for SEO or other tasks, Vue.js got you covered there as well. And it has a very minimal size in core, like 22 KB, and also it is very performant. It has a very good performance compared to other frameworks. And these are the features of Vue.js. It has virtual DOM. I will explain deeply about virtual DOM in the slide. So yeah, and it has reactivity. If you are from Angular world, you will know what is reactivity. I will explain that also. And it has pops. If you are from React world, you already know how to pass data for components, and Vue.js also has it. And it has this template syntax, which is very straightforward. You can use to write really nice UIs. So if you are from Angular world, you might be already familiar with this. And I will explain about this in further slides. Also, Vue.js has animations. So if you want to animate things within the framework, Vue.js supports that as well. And it has a thing called computed properties. I will explain that. And watchers. And it has a very nice way of event handling and TypeScript support. If you are like fan of Angular TS or React, you might already using TypeScript. So Vue.js also support this. And it has a functional API. So, and also the composition API, which is the new one. So, but I won't be talking about TypeScript support or functional API or composition API in this session. It is a bit advanced. I'm not targeting, I'm not going for advanced stuff today. So yeah, there's a must-watch video I would like to share with you. So this is from Ivan Yu. So he's describing about how these frameworks are built and what are the caveats of each of these frameworks. And even he is the creator of Vue.js. He does not like focus this mainly on Vue.js. He is like comparing Vue with other uh, frameworks out there, and he is giving honest opinion about that, how it was built and how where Vue.js like uh, like fits. So I will share the slides at the end, so you can watch this video. I think you, if you are if you are like new to content frameworks, I would really recommend you to do this, and then you will get a really nice idea about how these things are built. Right. So this is about the background and introduction. So Okay, I talked about the virtual DOM, and you might not be very familiar with virtual DOM. So let's see what it is. Okay, I think you can see this. So this is an normal HTML page. So you can write an HTML page in any editor you like. So it has a pretty basic page. It has a title and heading and paragraph. So this is how it stores as a file. So once you load this into browser, it will pass this file, and basically it will read this file, and then it will build an in-memory representation of this file. So this is known as a DOM. So in DOM, we have like separate tags in here. So we have the HTML tag as the root one, and we have head and other tags right there. So we have title and page title as the property, and then the browser will calculate uh, how this page should be rendered to user, and then it will show this. So this is how the DOM works. So to access the DOM, there is a way. So you can use JavaScript to access the DOM and manipulate how each of these behaves. For example, you can use JavaScript to change the title or other things. So this is the DOM, and this is the virtual DOM. So by the name, you might guess that this is virtual. So in here that you see, this is the page heading, the heading. So if we extracted this to virtual DOM node, we can represent this as a JavaScript object. So we have two properties. We have tag and children. And in children, we have the property called text, which contains the page heading. So this basically represents the DOM in JavaScript world. So like there's like one-to-one mapping between the DOM and your JavaScript world. So basically, accessing the DOM is a really expensive task. So accessing them again and again can lead to performance issues. So Vue.js and React both uses virtual DOM to mitigate this. So they build the virtual DOM like this once you compile the application and load into the browser. So it is like, in simple words, it is a JavaScript object. So then I said that this correspond to this element. So you have like mapping between virtual DOM node and the DOM element. So what Vue.js and React does is they are doing updates in virtual DOM because it is not very expensive to access that. It is in JavaScript side. So you can quickly access that and do changes and do other stuff. And then you can just dispatch these changes to the DOM, so it won't be very expensive. So this is how it really works. But I would like to mention that the React and Vue.js works in different ways. Even they uses virtual DOM, they have different strategies evaluating the virtual DOM algorithm. So I just say that they both uses virtual DOM, but in two different ways. So you can read more in here. I have put the link. Okay. Now we are going to do some things from Vue.js, and I'm using Vue 3, which was released very recently. And this is how you can install Vue.js. So you can use a CDN. You can just include this script anywhere in your application, in your web page, and you can use Vue.js snippet. Then you can use Vue.js with your application. Or most of the time you will be using npm and CLI to initialize a project. And there's a new one called White, which is also from Vue team, which is a very fast bundler, and it is like actually extremely fast. So you can try that also. Basically, for entire session, I'm going to use the CDN, and at the end of the session, I will show you some projects. So for that, I have used the CLI. Okay, so for next scripts, you see, I have already added this. Okay, so let's write your first Vue.js application. Okay, this is the first application. We are going to show a message to the user. So you can see I have created a dev element and it has ID of app, and it contains a message in here, which is and you might not be familiar with this, but this is the Vue.js template syntax. I think it is very straightforward here that I am willing to display a message on inside the div. So you can put any JavaScript expression here, and this is the application. So just a plain JavaScript object which has a data function which returns an object which contains the message. So the message is hello Vue.js. So this should get here, right? Let's see it in action first. Okay, now you see the message printed here. Okay. Basically, when you have the application logic, you need to use this create app function and initialize the application. And then using mount method, you need to mount that into your DOM. So now the Vue.js will take control of this dev element, and it will control how this DOM, it will link the DOM to this your application. So basically, you just saw a very boring example, right? It is just playing a message. But the truth is, Vue.js is doing a lot of works under the hood. It has linked the DOM to your data. So when you change data by any chance, like by an HTTP request or anything like an input or other any stuff, it will change the DOM after you change the data. So it is reactive. Reactive means that when you change the data, it is automatically updating the UI. So you don't worry about DOM updates anymore. Vue.js is handling everything for you. Okay. Okay, now I know that it's a very boring application. So now let's make it much more interesting. For this, I'm trying to do a very simple thing. I'm trying to handle events. So handling event means that you are responding to user action. For that, I have used the same example, but I slightly modified it. Instead of message, I have a count here. So count is defined in here, which is plus to 0. And I have added a button which has the text of increment, and now you see a new thing called v.on. So v.on is v.on tells Vue.js to listen for an event. So in here, I'm particularly interested in mouse click event. So this v.on is a special keyword for Vue.js. So this Vue.js compiler will see this, and it will compile this to handle this action. And you can see this. I have also added the method here, which is, refers this one. So in here, I am just incrementing the count by 1. So this v.on will trigger this action each time. So this okay. So now you know that methods section is exposed to the template, and actually writing v.on is like not very good looking. So you can write at instead here. So at click or at other things like at key up or other events like in custom event as well. It will be much more convenient to write that instead of v.on. You will see if you check out a Vue.js code, you will often see this at instead of v.on. So let's see application, and I have this button, and when I'm clicking it, I am updating the count, and Vue.js is now rendering it in DOM without any additional thing. So this is the entire code. So now you see how powerful is Vue.js. It is work like magic in here that you are just doing some action on data, and that is now propagated to DOM with very minimal steps. Okay. Now I'm going to teach you how to take user input. So I showed you how to handle an click event, and you can actually handle other events as well. The next big question for you is how we can respond to inputs. So in here that I have taken the same example with the message, but I have added a new element, which is an input element, which is taking a text here. And I have used a new keyword here, which is called v.model, which is referring the message. So now what happens is when you change this input, Vue.js will propagate that input value to the message, and then the same thing happens. When you change the message, the DOM is getting updated. So v.model is there to do two-way binding. If you are from Angular world, you might be very familiar with two-way binding. So this is it in Vue.js. Okay, let's see its action. So this hello Vue.js. So if I change the text like this, now you see it is updating DOM real time and with a very minimal code, right? So you might be wondering how Vue.js is doing all this magic behind the scenes. So actually, if you go to the Vue.js website, there is this section called reactivity in depth. You can check these videos and other stuff. So basically, Vue.js utilize a thing called proxy object in ESM, ES6 module. It is like a default module coming with browsers. So this API allows you to track objects, and when you doing some stuff on object, it is allowing you to do actions on these changes. So it is like yeah, an example here. I think it is loading. So this is how proxy object works. It is like tracking the changes and reactively update. Once something changes, it will propagate the change to other stuff. So basically, when you change the data, it will let know the Vue.js framework to update the UI as well. So there's an action going on when you change some property. So you can read more in here. I'm not going to explain that. Explain that because it is like a bit of an advanced thing. So that is how Vue.js work under the hood. And now we go into conditional rendering. So in conditional rendering, I think it is a very when you're developing applications, you might want to show or hide stops conditionally. So we've got you covered there as well. So there's a weave keyword in Vue.js, so you can use that to do some actions based on conditions. So my goal is to show a message to the user if you entered a very long message. Okay, this is the my Vue.js application. Now you see it is the same one. I have the input here and the v.model here. So now we have the reactivity between the message in the input and the DOM. And I have a new div here, which is with this vif keyword. So the goal is here, if the message length is over 25 characters, it should show this element to the user. Let's see it in action. And also, I say that in Vue.js, you can use v if, v else if, and v else to do conditional rendering. And as I said, this v if directive is removing or adding the element based on the condition you pass. But if you want to keep the DOM element all the time, you should use v show. So it will use CSS to hide the element from the user. So now let's see it in action. So this is hello Vue.js, the same text, the same application. So if I type something like this, now it is showing too long. Okay, let's see how it looks. Okay, now you see this task in here is now appeared in the DOM. Now I am removing this, and you see it is now removed from the DOM. And if I add it again, now it is appearing again inside the DOM. So this is how it works. And the next thing is when doing loops. So now you know how to display things conditionally, and then you might need to store things like an array of objects or any kind of thing. So for that, you need to use loops. So that's another keyword called v4. And my goal is to render simple to-do list in here. So for that, my application looks like this. In data, I have defined this list of items, which is containing a text property. And it is very simple. So in here, I have used the template syntax again, and I have a list in here, and I am adding each of elements using v4. So this is like a normal for loop in other programming languages. So you have the array, and you are taking each element, and you are printing the elements. You are like rendering the elements contents inside this list element in HTML. So it is very simple. Actually, you don't need a text here because this is just an string. So you can just define a string array as well. But I specifically specifically added this object in here to show that it is not only referring to a single value. You can access other properties as well, and you can also evaluate JavaScript expressions in here as well. So it is not limited to just displaying things. You can do any evaluation here too. So it was my goal by adding this text property. Yes. So okay. Now let's see it in action. Now you see the entire list is rendered here with like very minimal code, right? So it's very simple, I think, taking these elements and printing, showing them each of them in the order you pay. Okay. Then I'm going to a new thing called attribute binding. So I use this Harry Potter GIF here because you know that once you enter to Hogwarts, you are selected to a house. So this is something like that. You are telling Vue.js to do some attribute binding. So application, these elements can use these things. Okay, so there's the directive called vbind. And in vbind, we can just bind these things to HTML properties. So props, if you are using a component. I will explain about props and components later. So basically, for now, let's think of that as it is like allowing you to control how DOM element works. For example, in button, there's a property which you can use to enable or disable the state. So I am using this vbind to bind this property to this value defined here. So it is a Boolean, so it is now false. What I'm going to do is basically use this property to enable a button, and when you click it, it should not work. So I will show it in an example here. So okay, now I can you see this button is now working. When I try to click, click it, it is working. But if I click this toggle button, now it is not working because I have used this vbind to remove this functionality. Now you can't just use this button anymore. So, but if you try to click this again, it will again activate this button. So in here, this logic is very simple. It is taking this disabled property defined in the data, and it is just changing the value. If it is true, it is going to be false. If it is false, it is going to be true. So then the DOM is updated by Vue.js, and the button will change its state. So actually, you don't directly interact with DOM in here. Vue.js doing that task for you as well. And okay, I think worked out. So one usage of this is to bind an image source. Uh, uh, Bind an image source. For example, if you are loading an image from internet, you might want to have a dynamic source. Dynamic source. For example, it might be loading from AWS or your own server. So you might want to dynamically bind that image source into your image. So for do that, you can use the same method. You can use vbind to have that feature. So I mean, writing vbind is like very verbose, so you can just ignore that and use this shorthand method. You will see that often in Vue.js application. Okay, so now let's talk about class and style binding. Class and style bindings. I mean, this is very similar to what you saw with this example as well. These are like properties in HTML tags. So in here, I'm trying to do the same thing like I did before. I'm trying to change the background of an element in here using CSS. So this is my application. It has two buttons, which is incrementing and decrementing this value defined here. And there's a div element which is displaying the count, and it has a counter class here. And what I'm going to do is I am dynamically adding this red class to this counter based on this condition. So if count is over 5, it should appear in red. So you see this. You see like there are like two class definitions in here. This one is static because I don't intend to change that. So this class is applied for div element permanently. But this one, which is dynamic, it can be changed based on conditions. So I have separated them out. So Vue.js will only react on this one. And okay, you can also use same with styles as well. Okay, this is the application. We'll open dev here. Well, so you see the counter class is applied, and I'm incrementing the value. Now you see there is a red class appeared here, and this is now changed. If I decrement again, this red class disappears from the DOM, right? I think you got the idea. If you want to dynamically enable or dynamically add CSS classes, this is the way you can go. So in here, I have defined an object, but you can actually use an string, an array, or any other thing you want. You can read about this in documentation. Um, okay, this is how it works. Okay, now one. So I described something about computer properties, and I didn't explain there. So if you are from React or Angular world, I think you might not be very familiar about this. This is like a thing in Vue.js. So what it does is like, you know that uh, we had data, and you know that Vue.js is acting on data. And most of the time you want to filter things out and you want to show specific items from your data. So you have a data source and you need to extract some things from your data and you need to show them to users. So there are like a lot of ways to achieve this. You can use a method, you can use data again, and that is not very convenient because you already have data somewhere else. So computed properties are like acting properties for your component. So they are using an existing data source to build up a computed property which can be used within the template. So these results are now stored by the Vue.js framework. So it won't be recalculated unless the underlying data source changes. So they are also reactive. Okay, so and it is reducing the template complexity. You will see that next example. So I will make our to-do list more interesting. And what I want to do is I want to show completed items separately. Okay, now this is my application. I have to-dos defined in here. It has additional property called done. And in for this bring milk, I have defined it to false. I have set it to false, and for others it is true. And in here I have two separate uh, for loops. One is to show everything in the list, and the other one is to show the completed items. As you can see, I have added another section to my application, and it has this completed function, which is actually taking this list, and I am filtering uh, each of these item, and I am just finding the element in this array which has this done property true. So then the result will be cached by Vue.js, and it will be used by this for loop right here. So if you use a computer property, think it as a data property in your application. So you can use it as anywhere you like. So okay, let's see it in action. Okay, now you see that there is this every item listed here, and this one only has completed item. So imagine that writing this with just data or using a method. I think this you all are quite clear that methods are not reactive. If you want to get some value from a method, you need to specifically call it using an action or some kind of event. Other than that, they are not self-evaluating, but computed properties are self-evaluating. If you change the underlying data, they will propagate that change to the UI. So this is reactive, as I explained before. So now you can see the template is much more simplified, and it has a really good name in here. It's completed instead of this array right here. You can just do the for loop. You can just use this code in here as well, but it will make our template much more verbose, and it will be very hard to maintain it because it has a lot of logic inside the template. So if you want to like hide this complexity and use it in a more convenient way, the computed properties are the way to go. Okay, so let's talk about watches. So watches are a very special thing in Vue.js. Now you saw you can have reactive properties in your Vue.js applications, which are reacting to underlying data source changes. But there are like certain situations that you might want to do some other tasks instead of just updating the UI. For example, imagine that you are developing a really cool application and you have a search. So when you type something in the search, it should actually fetch the data from the backend, and then it should display this data to users. So this cannot be done using a computed property because it is not designed for that task. And if you want to run asynchronous operations like doing an HTTP call, this is the way to go. And for example, the other things in your search application, there can be like filters. If you are familiar with other search engines like Google, or for example, like in Amazon, you can filter things out by stars or other things. So you need to wait for an specific data value change, and maybe run the computation again and react again. So the vouchers are the way to go. way to go. So for this one, I'm going to do an really cool example. I'm going to use an real world API to show how vouchers works. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I decided to show how we can search characters in Star Wars franchise. So this is an API I found in internet called Star Wars API. You can use this to fetch search about people in Star Wars franchise and get it. So now you see I have searched for Han Solo and appeared right here. So I'm going to use this in my application. Uh, this is my application. It has input of text, which is using a v.model. You already know how it works. When you change the v.model allows you to change the search variable in your data, and it will automatically update that or run any DOM update. And then I have a list which is taking a result array, and I am displaying the name of the user. You can see right here, it is returning a name like this. So I'm only interested on that. Okay. And additionally, you are now seeing a new property called key in here. This is actually letting Vue.js know which element is which. So, for example, for each element there is an unique index, and I am adding that index as the key. So, if you, for example, for your application, there might be key assigned by backend as well, like a unique identifier. You can use it here as well. What it does, it is letting Vue.js know it is actually helping Vue.js to update the elements in the DOM. So if when something changes inside your arrays or your data source, Vue.js will look for this key. If it can find that key, and it will try to update only that part. So it won't be doing the same computation again and again. It will efficiently update that. So it is the reason why I use key here. You can read about this in documentation as well. Okay, I think you are pretty familiar with this template syntax. And now let's check out the application. So as you already know, I had the search variable, which is currently empty. And I have an array to store all the results from Starwars API. And now I am pretty much interested on the search value, and I am adding now I am trying to react to these changes. So you can see this new section called watch, and I am using this name right here, and Vue.js will give me the new value when it is changing. So I am just checking whether it is empty or not. And if it is not empty, I am running this method right is defined right here. So it is basically fetching the Starwars character from the backend API. If you are not familiar with this H API, it is coming from the browser itself, so you can communicate with backends. And after I got an result, I am turning it to JSON, and I am fetching the results array. Is this one from the result from this HTTP result? And if there's an error, I will just log it to the console. That is pretty much it. So let's see it in action. Okay. Okay. Now I will try to search someone. Try to search Darth Vader. Okay. Now you can see. Okay. Now you can see I got the result from the API. And if I search for like now you see the result directly fetched from the API. So you might see that it is running several times because I am not debouncing this input because I am typing too fast. It is sending an request to the backend each and every time. Since this is a very simple example, I didn't intended to use debouncing techniques here. If you are really interested in that, you can search in Google and find it how it works. So basically, the idea is here that I can run an asynchronous operation when the data changes. So like this. So I think now you are pretty familiar with how to watch to and react to these changes in your application. So now you have like powerful set of tools. You can use computed properties to take existing data sources and use them to display various things. And you can now use uh, watchers in your application, which will react to data changes and do expensive operations like looking up using an HTTP API or doing complex calculation or any other task. Okay, I think I covered pretty much the basic of Vue.js. Now I'm trying to uh, teach, give you some insight about components. Uh, For all of these examples, I used a single Vue.js instance. And now you might feel like using a single instance is not really good because all of your application logic will be in the same instance and it can have, it won't be very good. You can't even maintain an application like this. So you can use components to break this uh, set of logics into separate Vue.js uh, uh, components. So the components are like actually like another set of Vue instances. You will see when I explain that in next slides. So for example, take a look at this uh, website. In here, I have a navigation bar and a sidebar. So you can use Vue.js to break down these things into different components. So you have this root element and root component, and then you can have this main content bar here and side bar here and navigation bar here, and like that you can just break these things down, and it will be very easy to reuse them. And they are, since they are self-contained, their state won't be leaked to the parent component, so they are like self-isolated. And since they are like self-contained, they can be reused in your application uh, uh, for different in different places and anywhere you like. So for this one, we will be creating a profile component here. So this is how it look like. I have div ID called app, and I have a div called profile, and it has the name and age. And this is how it looks. So now we will create the Vue.js application instance, but I have made a little change here. Instead of like mounting this directly to the DOM, I have taken it to a variable. And in here, I have also defined a user with two properties called name and age. So as you can see, I am going to use these properties to display these with values in my profile component. And okay, so the thing is here is that I have taken this Vue.js application instance, so I can use that to register other components inside it. So in here, I have created app.component. App is this variable, app.component, and I am defining a profile component here. It has a pop section which is taking a user, and I am taking the name and age of this from this prop here, and I'm displaying that as in my template. So it's like an Vue.js instance. So this is how you can use it in your application. You can just use profile here and pass the user via attribute binding using the props. This one. And now you might wondering that this profile is not an HTML component. Vue.js will replace that with this one once you compile the application. So so other thing is that POPs allows you to pass data from your parent to the child. But if you want to pass data back to the parent, you can emit a custom event here. But unfortunately, I don't have time to explain in this in this one. But you can read it in documentation. I have put a link here. And now let's see it in action. Okay, the profile component is now displayed. Bring up the inspect elements, and now you see there's no profile here. The profile, this one is not there. Instead of that, it is now replaced by this HTML element, which the data I passed from this pair is name Yoda and year 900. So that is how the components work. So, but there's a problem, right? There's a big problem. What about the syntax highlight? If you take this out, this template is like a string template. It doesn't have any kind of syntax highlighting. It is like displaying as an just a plain string, and it's not very nice for applications or code editors. This is not very nice. So we have SFC single file components, which solves this problem. So this is how it looks like. You can define these things separately. You can have a template section, which is containing your template, which will be displayed to user, and the script section, which you can use to define your application business logic. So in here, I have defined a message and something like hello single file component. And in here, there's this style section, which you can use to style your component. So this files ends with .vu extension. You will see that in action in my sample. And it is very flexible. Now you can see you can have different sections in here. For example, if you use GraphQL, there is a most of the libraries will define a section for you, so you can use that in your application. And it's very scalable, since this is like the logic is contained into a single file. You can just check it out and do debugging, and it's very easy to scale. And since with this style tag, there is another good opportunity. Previously, we couldn't style components individually, but now you can use styling with CSS or SCSS or SAS or anything you like, and to style the component. And it has a better template support. Now you see the browser will show this. Now you can see the editor will show syntax highlighting on them as well, and it is very readable. And it is separation. It has this separation concerns. Now you have separate the templates from scripts and styles and other things. So it is very nice. Okay, so now we are going to see an application. So I have created the same application I talked about, TODO application, and I have made it more awesome. So I can add, and I will show how application works. For example, I can add send post event post .lk, and then we view docs build cool view app. So I can add items like this, but I am not willing you to add the same item again and again. So I copied this value and I'm trying to add it again, and it is not added by the application. Then I can tick each of these off. You see there's the completed section, and it is showing you how much these tasks are completed, and you can uncheck these things and you see this element now gone. If you don't have any completed tasks, it won't be shown, and it is updating while you uh, try to mark them as done. The other thing is that you can actually remove an item here. So if I try to do this, it will remove that item, and it will also update the computer, update this completed section as well. So this is the application, and also you can't add empty values here. You can't add empty items, and this is how it works. And I will explain how it was built. So for that, I have used the CLI to initialize the project in Code Sandbox. So this is where the HTML file is, and it has the div ID app, which might be very familiar to you now, to you right now. And this main.js is the entry point for your application. It is initializing the application Vue.js method called create app, and mounting the app into this dev element, as you already know from previous example. In app.vue, uh, I have imported the component here in this component section, and now it is also available for our HTML uh, our HTML part. So you can use right here. So it is not much. It has some basic styling, and it is just importing the component and using it, the HTML part. And in component, I have defined how it works. First, I have defined a class to contain all of this, and the style is defined right here. And I have added the heading like this, and I have added an input element which is using v.model, and my goal is to when user press the enter button, I want to add this item to my list. So I am using this event handler. Once you type the uh, text you want and press the enter button, it will run this uh, function defined here. So then I have this section for completed, which is displayed right here. It will show the completed count, and you can see it defined here. And then I am just displaying the items in a list. Okay, so this is how I define the list of items and current item I'm typing here, like this. So this is the method to add it to the list, and it is just checking whether it is an empty string, and I'm also checking whether it is an existing one. I will check it using this array, and if it is existing, I am just removing this current one and resetting it back to the previous state. And if it is a new one, I will just add it to the list like this and remove what is typed here, like this. Okay, so the completed items are, as I told you, I have an existing data source to contain all the list items I want, and I can, to get the completed task, I will filter them out and get the length of it. So you now get 2 here. So it's a computed property. And as I said, since they are reactive, I can use conditions like with data. So I have created a v if here, and if it is higher than 0, I will display the element right here. And for the list, it is very simple. It is like taking the items and displaying it. And in here, and I have added an additional thing. This box. I can just use that to mark it is done or not. And I am using so since these elements are in reactive state, I can directly refer to an element in my list, and I can change the value inside. So you can see that when I am adding a new item, I'm setting this value to false. And in here, I am referring to that one using v.model, and I am just making it true or false based on the value of this box. So then I have this when some item is completed in completed state, I want to show the user that it is completed. So I am changing the style. So I have defined the done style here, which will do this strike through and change the color to green. And conditionally, I am applying that right here using property binding, using attribute binding. Then I have this button to remove this item from the list. Click this, it will be removed. So how it works, it like basically when I'm clicking on the button, it should remove that item from the list. So I am again using the JavaScript method called splice, and I am splicing the array from current current state right here. So this is the index. I mean, basically, I am taking the current index of the item, and I am just using this splice method in array to remove that element from this list. So you can read about splice in documentation of JavaScript. You can find in MDN docs. It is just simply removing a single element from current index. So that is how the application works. You can check this out. I will share the code with you. I think this now I have explained everything, and I have also created an application as well. So now let's talk about the ecosystem. So Vue.js has a really rich ecosystem. You can use Vooks for global state management if your app gets complex. And if your components need to share a state between each of them, you can maintain it in a single place. So Vooks will be the single source of truth of your application. And you can use Vue router for routing if your application has multiple pages. Vue router can be used to navigate between these component which is acting as pages, and you can pass data to it as well, and it will also maintain the browser history. And there's much more. I'm not talking about them right now. And for tooling, you can use CLI tool, White, or in browser, you can use Vue.js as a very nice tooling system. You can debug components and integrate into Vooks and router integration as well. And if you are trying to use VS Code, you can use Vita to do code completion and syntax highlighting. And about UI frameworks, there are like there are like Wootify, Bulma, Bootstrap Vue, and Element UI, and there are like a lot of other UI toolkits which you can use to quickly craft really nice applications. And the Nux, I talked about this earlier. So Nux is the Vue.js framework, which is giving you an intuitive way to design your application. Instead of like just single page applications, it has a lot of things like server-side rendering built in, and it has static web pages, You can build static websites with Nox, and you can also build single page applications. And it is very performant, and it is doing a lot of work under the hood. It is like Next.js for React, if you use that before. And it contains a lot of tooling, so it has file system routing, and it's very scalable. So if you're going to use Vue.js in a real big project, I would really recommend to use Nox, because it will handle a lot of things for you. For example, adding and styling, style preprocessor like SAS or SCSS. It can be done very easy with Nox, and you can actually focus building your application rather than worrying about these things. And it also has other toolings besides adding these features to your project. It has other methods called async data and other stuff, so which you can use to create really beautiful applications with less writing very less code. So now you know the basic and what to do next. First of all, you should read the documentation. It is well written. As I told you, that it has everything in like very good way. It has a really good documentation. You can read about animations and the advanced stuff as well. So, and also you can watch tutorials on Vue Mastery or Vue School, and you can learn advanced stuff in documentation. It covers pretty much everything. And if you want to find cool stuff, you can reach Awesome Vue, which contains like style guides and components like this, like for example, table components, form components, notification components, and others. And also, if you have any question about Vue.js, you can reach the community. There are like a lot of places. They are in like a lot of places, so you can find them in documentation as well. And that's it for this presentation. I think it took around like 1 hour now. So you can reach me out using any of these links. And if you have any further questions, you can ask me out, ask me out about these things, and I would be very happy to help you. And that's all for today. And thank you all for joining with me for Vue.js introduction. And if you have any questions, I think Havindu posted a link. I will check it out. Okay. Okay. So first one is without knowing Angular and React, can I learn Vue.js? Yes, of course you can. You can learn Vue.js. You don't need to learn Angular or React to learn Vue.js. I think it is a very good framework for anyone who would like to learn about content frameworks. Then someone asked, like, Vue is like CSS. No, it is not like CSS. It is like React. If you use that, it's like a front-end framework which helps you to build your application. It is not like a styling thing. And one asked that why people choose Vue over React. Is there any specialties on performance? Like, I feel like Vue is like a mess. We are inherit concept from both React and Angular. That's one reason I don't Vue. Yeah. So yeah, there's a special reason if you want to try Vue over React. Actually, Vue is faster than React because it has a different mechanism for evaluating things. Um, in here, someone said that Vue is like a mess, but I don't think it is like a mess, because it is taking good from both Angular and React. For example, in Angular, you are pretty limited to the ecosystem. So you can't go beyond that. In React, you are using JSX and other things, and you are like losing to work with HTML and other stuff. So Vue brings both into the same table. And so if you like to use Vue.js like you use with React, you can take a look at composition API and functional API. So that will be much closer to React. So you can use that as well. So there are like a lot of flexibility coming with React in Vue.js compared to other frameworks, in my personal opinion. So no, Vue.js is not a backend language. So this yeah, you can use basically the concept is used to initialize your Vue.js application. In real world, you will actually not write codes like this, because since I'm using the CDN, I use this app instance right there. But usually you are like defining it as a component, which I showed in my previous example. Yeah, I explained about Nux, and yeah, you can use Sublime for Vue.js. I think I answered all these questions.
Okay, yes, sir. And again, thank you so much, Kasunaya, for your valuable time you gave us. Actually, and I think it was very valuable for our participants. And in here we have posted a feedback form also. You can comment on your valuable feedbacks there. So please fill this form by getting 1 minute. Uh, so because it was very valuable for us when we are organizing our next events. So now I think this is the time to end this. Kasunaya, is there anything to?
No, I think
Right.
the thing is that if you learn something from this, I really recommend you to go to the documentation and try to do some example on your own. I will share the code in here, so anyone can go through in the slides and do anything like do any experiment on these things and try these things out. And then I think you will be very familiar with Vue.js ecosystem, and will be a great start.
Yeah, actually, learn from mistakes, and this is very funny. I think I'm also very like this. So, and thanks again, Kasunaya, and thanks all participants who participated. And so we can end this webinar now. So hope you all can see you next event. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.